if you want to apply for a higher pension from the Employees Pension Scheme, EPS, the last date is 3rd of May 2023, which is tomorrow. The deadline was extended by Employees Provident Fund Organization, EPFO, by 2 months from the earlier deadline of 3rd of March 2023. Following the Supreme Court's ruling in November last year, the EPFO had issued the procedure for applying for higher pension under the Employee Pension Scheme under joint option. Now, in its order, Supreme Court had given a 4-month window to eligible employees to apply for higher pension. Pressure is now mounting on EPFO to extend the deadline for submitting joint option for higher pension beyond 3rd of May from several trade unions. However, there are still certain issues regarding which clarity has to be provided by EPFO. For example, EPFO is yet to issue any circular clarifying computation of pension. There is no clarity regarding how dues will be calculated, also no clarity on if an individual has opted for the new scheme, can they opt out if the additional dues are higher than expected? All those questions, of course, we're trying to find answers today. With me in the studio, my colleague Karthik, and Suyash continues to be here. I want to understand first, coming to you, Suyash, who is eligible for higher pension?
So, Shweta, as per the February 2023 circular of the EPFO, employees who have been part of the EPF since or on or before September 1st, 2014, they can apply for higher pension who have been contributing more than the basic salary. I mean the more than the capping of 15,000, they have been contributing more than that. They are eligible, or those who missed out on the opportunity to opt for a higher pension scheme before September 1st, 2014. They are eligible.
Okay. Karthik, huge debate, old pension, new pension, what to opt for, what not to opt for. For the benefit of our viewers, we want some clarity.
Right. So, old pension scheme, new pension scheme, completely different scenarios.
Absolutely.
Right. Let's not confuse ourselves. We are already quite confused. Let's not confuse ourselves with that. What is this EPS? Right. EPS is actually nothing but a part of your contribution to EPFO every month. Now, let's look at the broad level calculation. How does this really work? Now, every month, Shweta, when we get our salaries as employees from a basic salary, see, in the case of government, there is basic plus DA. In most private companies, the DA component does not really exist. So, let's just, for the sake of simplicity, look at the basic salary.
Okay.
Now, every month, there is a certain basic salary which is part of our pay structure. 12% of that is contributed to EPFO from our side, the employee's side. 12% gets deducted and gets contributed from the employer's side, right? Now, specifically in the case of employees, the 12% contribution that we make goes directly towards the Provident Fund, which is part of EPFO. EPFO has got two little hooks. One is the Provident Fund and one is the pension scheme. So, all our contribution of 12% goes straight towards the Provident Fund part. From the employer's kitty, the 12% of our basic that the employer deposits to EPFO, only 3.67% actually goes towards Provident Fund, and the balance 8.3% goes towards the pension scheme. So, irrespective, of course, the criteria now being that you should have been in service on 1st of September 2014 to be able to do your back calculation and apply for a higher pension scheme. That is the moot cause right now. But just to sort of be even more clear on how this pension is really calculated, the government says that when a private sector employee retires who has been a contributor to EPFO, he or she should be eligible to get 50% of the last drawn basic salary, and this last drawn basic salary is also averaged out over 60 months. So, from your date of retirement or last date of service in any organization, 5 years before that, 60 months, you look at the basic salary of the individual over those 60 months divided by 60, which gives you the mean, the average.
Right.
That is the amount which is your pensionable salary. Now, the formula for that is that pensionable salary, the average, multiplied by number of years of service. Number of years of service, the government caps at 35. So, if you served for 30 years, 31 years, 34 years, that is the whole number that goes. If you served beyond 35 years, 36 years, 40 years, it is capped at 35. So, best case, highest case scenario, pensionable salary, which we just calculated, times number of years of service capped at 35 years divided by 70. Why 70, you would ask? I think it's that magic number of 70. But technically what the government is trying to do is that for somebody who's served 35 years, right, should get 50% of the salary. So 35 divided by 70 is 1/2 into pensionable amount. So for example, if you had ₹1,00,000 as your weighted average over the last 60 salary months as your basic salary, and you have served 35 years or more, the government wants to ensure that you get 50% of that 50,000 rupees a month as your pension.
If you're earning 1 lakh average over the last 5 years.
Over the last 5 years, over the last 60 months, right?
Okay.
So this average is also a great window because, you know, sometimes you take a pay cut, there could be a black swan event and you happen to lose your job, right? So it is averaged out over 60 months. So
your pension decreases in case you've taken a break in the last 5 years.
Right, but then it averages out a good part of your salary and a not too good part of your salary, so that overall you are not badly hit. It doesn't take only the last drawn salary, it averages out over your last 60 months.
Okay. So from what I understand is that, and I'm not calling it new pension, I'm calling it higher pension this time around.
Yeah.
Higher pension, people are still not clear on a lot of aspects, and one of which is the formula that you just put out for us. The other is that
so disclaimer, this is the formula that came into effect as on 1st September 2014.
Okay.
Right.
So we don't know whether the same formula applies.
Now the bone of contention right now is that the order that Suyash was just pointing towards, November last year, the Supreme Court actually came out with this ruling. So what happened really, you know, this whole debate got lost because it did not get enough publicity and there weren't too many takers for this higher pension scheme, right? And not too many employees really opted for this, if nothing else for lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. So the government was, according to some of my journalist friends who cover EPFO very specifically, they told me that the government was mulling over withdrawing this higher EPS offer scheme per se.
And why is that?
Because there weren't enough takers.
Okay,
right.
that's
now,
that.
Yeah, but then there was a petition filed in the Supreme Court wherein, you know, a back calculation done suggested that the employee who had filed a petition actually ended up becoming some 30 lakh rupees richer because he had opted for this scheme, and hence withdrawal of that scheme is not going to do good for the larger community. So anyway, so coming back to the real issue here, the issue is that some employees today feel that it is important to get a higher pension. Now let's understand this pension payout mechanism also, right? Until our experts join us. Now, how do you get your pension? And that's an important part. Now, whatever money goes towards your pension, EPS, you start getting that from the day you retire. And in private sector, retirement age as per EPFO is defined at 58 years. So once you're 58 years and you hang your boots, that is when you start getting your pension. Now you have, as a retired employee, you have the option to withdraw 50% of this pension corpus as one-time lump sum.
Okay.
However, if you are eligible for gratuity, then you can withdraw only 1/3 of this as lump sum, and the balance in either scenario, either 50% or 70% is paid to you as monthly installments, or you could call it a monthly pension salary, which comes to you every month till the day you live, right? Now, in the case of a deceased retired employee, the wife or the husband, as the case may be, the spouse is eligible to receive 50% of this salary. Now, if the spouse also cops it, then the children, a maximum of 2 children, can avail 25% of this pension amount every month, but till the age of 25.
Okay.
Right. Thereafter, the pension per se ceases to exist and you've sort of done your tenure. Now, the point really in all this quagmire is that somebody who opts for a higher pension today, he doesn't understand now who's going to pay retrospectively for his pension.
Absolutely.
Right. That retrospective amount that goes towards the pension corpus, not the provident fund corpus.
From 2014 onwards.
From 2014 onwards is actually deducted from your provident fund corpus and transferred to your pension corpus, all housed within EPFO itself.
Okay.
Right. Now, there are multiple calculations involved here where you don't know at what interest rate from 2014 to now, how much amount will be reduced from your provident fund kitty and transferred to your pension account. And now when you do your overall retirement planning or your overall personal finance planning, it becomes very difficult to compare these multiple interest rates and juxtapose them with other financial products.
Right.
So if EPFO,
and especially if there's no clarity there.
Exactly, right. So that is the clarity which is being sought. Yes, I want to opt for a higher pension scheme. On what basis is the
burden?
Transfer from my provident fund to my pension scheme really going to happen?
Right.
So the whole confusion is, let's say my provident fund earns me a 7% interest rate. What was the interest rate which was fetching me in 2014, in 2016, in 2019, in 2021 and today? Over time it has given me different yield on my deposit. At what interest rate will the calculation be made to transfer that amount from my provident account to my pension account?
Right.
Now this pension corpus will also be built over, I believe, the same interest rate as the PF, right? Now that is not going to happen retrospectively, because that will kick in only once the transfer from provident fund to pension has been completed. Now once that journey is through, how do I compare that with, let's say, other financial assets which could sort of yield me similar or better dividend if I stay invested in provident fund today than a pension fund 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, depending on my sort of retirement horizon from now. So the question really that needs a lot of answering from personal finance experts and chartered accountants and the wizards who sort of crunch numbers on Excel sheets and do these analysis is who is the most eligible person to apply for a higher pension scheme. You have 3 years of service, 10 years of service, 20 years of service left. Who should apply for it?
Right. And let's throw these questions. We have experts joining in, Suyash. Let's throw these questions to them. Shweta Kapoor, partner, Singhania and companies also joining us. Shantala Kumble, who's the Senior VP at Money Matters. Appreciate you taking time out. I want to come to you, Shweta, first. There's a lot of questions here, of course. One is, and I think it comes to my mind, is am I in the right age bracket to be applying for the higher pension? Does it make sense if I'm at the age of, let's say, 35, I want to do it today as opposed to doing it 10 years later, which, by the way, the window closes for that. But if someone, let's say, sitting here next to me is 45 years old, does it make sense for them to apply? What sort of calculations come into effect while applying for a higher pension?
Objection taken to 45.
So see, essentially what has been happening is that because of the fact that most of the government policies and schemes are challengeable in a court of law, we see that there has been a lot of lag and delay between the scheme coming in and then it getting into action. So what we find is that by the time the scheme has actually become effective, the equity market, the debt market, and the way people make their investments and NPS and other ELSS, all of these schemes have already come in the market, people have already availed them, and they have become more popular as instruments. So now, because of that reason, the calculation has become tougher. Initially, what used to happen was that we would find that people would only invest in government bonds, PF and pension, and the other gratuity, etc., were a very big part of one's retirement planning and everything. But these days, that is not the case. Also, I believe that there are certain clarifications sought from the court which are still pending, I think, to be answered. A few of the companies and even the government is seeking some clarification, some kind of reviews are being planned to be filed before the Supreme Court to take certain clarities. So initially the planning was that EPFO will close the window on the 3rd of March, which could not happen because it was a very short time duration for everyone to even understand the implication of what they're applying for. But what I believe is most important is that everyone should understand that the deficit has to be paid out of the employee's pocket. So nothing now remains to be paid from the employer's pocket. The contribution that has already been made by the employee, which has gone into the EPFO, out of that certain percentage will go into the kitty of the pensioner. So now what we really need to understand is that you may be age 35 or you may be age 40. It is the volatility in the market that will encourage you to maybe have a higher pension at the time of your retirement, but not the fact that that you can keep your money in a safer place like a PF. So you get your interest rates in your PF even till the age of 58. So 57, the PF stops getting any interest, and you get all your money out if you want by age 58, etc. So if once you're already getting a high rate of interest over there, which is a secure place to keep your money, and you can get it all out for yourself at the end, would you really want to go in for something like a higher pension? Because at the time of your death, your nominee will start being paid the pension, but he will never get the principal back. There are all of these moot questions, which we all need to understand, and we all need to debate and get answers to all the employees, that they need to put all the pros and cons together. It is never easy to calculate exact rates of interest, as the expert before me clearly said. Also, like I said, this is more like a traditional instrument in which people may want to contribute, may not want to contribute, because they do know that they will be getting their PF at least at the end of their employment journey. So yeah, that's where I come from.
Okay.
So will the formula stay the same? The formula that is on your screen right now, in fact it just went, the formula for calculation of pension still remains the same in the absence of any new formula disclosed by the government. Will the formula be the same, that your pensionable salary, which is actually the average of your last 60 drawn salaries, times number of years of service divided by 70, is that formula going to stay until there is a new formula that that sort of gets notified?
Yes, so we were expecting that maybe after the judgment comes and there is some clarity going forward, there may be a formula still, but not at the moment so far as EPS 95 is concerned. There's
Okay.
nothing coming on from the government at the moment. Also,
Okay.
I think because they want to keep everybody at par and parity and not create too much discrepancy right now that they want to put it actually into motion.
All right. And on what basis? I think the moot question here is for somebody who does decide to opt for a higher pension as part of as part of the same sort of basic salary. You don't want to get too much money in your provident fund. Rather, you want to get a more durable pension at your retirement. The moot question really is on what calculation, on what basis, using which formula will the money get deducted from your provident fund and transferred to the pension scheme, and what interest rate applicable across the multiple installments of PF contribution that an employee has done will be taken into account to make that transfer from provident fund to EPS.
So at the moment, it remains the same. So it will be 8.67. The
So will
last
the
figure.
present day interest rate be taken into account, or interest rate from, let's say, 1st September 2014 till, let's say, if tomorrow is the last day, I make the contribution today, 2nd May 2023, will it pick up the interest rates applicable during the different parts in that journey, or will today's interest rate be applicable?
So I think because the cutoff is September 14, I don't think that the current interest rate will make too much of a difference to it. It will be calculated backwards towards September 14 itself. However, there is no clarity in the judgment on this. So
Okay.
this is something that we've also understood sitting with the chartered accountants and understanding how it will be calculated. This is essentially something actually on which a circular from the EPFO should be coming. The only clarity that repeatedly the EPFO is giving to all the employees is that whatever calculations they make and they are expecting to be paid according to, they have to understand that the entire deficit contribution has to be made from them, and nothing will be recoverable from the employer. So that is what they have to keep in mind.
Okay.
What the exact, yeah.
Okay. Let me also get in Shantala Kumble at this point in time. Shantala, do you agree that we are still awaiting some sort of clarification from EPFO at this point in time? So what do people like me do, because last date is tomorrow?
Yeah, I definitely think this needs to be extended because there's a lot of clarity pending. I mean, both in terms of how exactly one goes ahead and applies for this, and going ahead how the formula, etc., applies and needs to get calculated. Because going by the calculations that we make, it looks like a no-brainer. One has to opt for it, because if you actually see and apply the the formula given, the pension actually what you get is more than 4-5 times higher than what you will get if you don't opt for it. But if you actually go back and calculate what actually you're using and losing and what goes away from your PF corpus, then you will realize that it may not make sense to opt for it. So until you get clarity, and we know that once it is opted, you can't go back and change it back. So really a lot of clarity is needed, and very difficult to actually suggest whether you have to go in for it or not. And also it depends on a lot of other factors, I think, because when it comes to retirement, it has to be seen as a whole. So if you have enough corpus already, which family can take care of after one passes away, then maybe choosing makes sense, because the corpus is not going to come back if one passes away, which is not the case if you have a bigger EPF corpus. So I think a lot of other things has to be taken into account before choosing. And but more importantly, more clarity, definitely, before going for something.
Shantala, just help us understand from a pure, calculation, mathematical calculation perspective. Now, it becomes, they are saying that you could opt for a higher EPS, but this higher EPS will also have to be within the bracket of the 12% of your basic income as a contribution. Am I right? And if the formula still happens to be 50% of your basic over the last 60 months, then is there a new thinking really, fundamentally in calculation of a higher pension?
Yeah. If you actually go and calculate based on what they have given, that is the 12% moves from your EPF.
Yeah.
And instead of, 12% of the entire average salary, 5%, 5 years average salary is what you take. Entire 12% moves into EPS instead of EPF. Right now there is this 8.33% of the cap. Now the cap goes away. So if you calculate on the total, the actual pension that you give is abnormally high.
Yeah, but that cap is the employer's contribution cap, right? Now, if that cap goes away, what I wanted to ask you was that can I, as an individual employee, also contribute 12% not to EPF but EPS? Or conversely, can I continue contributing my 12% to EPF, whereas my employer's contribution, I change it completely and say the entire 12% can go towards pension? Or is there a further cap of some 1.6, 1.67% or something? I remember the figure. Is that the maximum I can tweak it to, or can I move it completely in the reverse?
Yeah, from what we see from the regulations, it's only the employer contribution. There may not be merit in giving the employee contribution also into EPS.
So can the entire 12% of employer contribution move towards EPS?
Yes.
Or can it only be changed up to 1.67% either way?
No, I don't think that option is given. At least from what we read, that doesn't look like the option. It looks like the entire 12% of the employer contribution will move to EPS.
Okay, let me also introduce Sushil Jain, who's the CEO of Personal CFO, also joining us at this point in time. Sushil, you heard what Shantala was saying there. Your take on what essentially happens to the mathematics of it. The 12%, does an employee have a say on what percentage goes towards PF and can move the entire contribution from employee's side to EPS?
Well, if I rightly hear you, the contribution may be increased more than 12% also, but it will be both sides. So the government side is from employer side is that limit is there, but for the individuals they can increase based on their basics and all.
Their own contribution, or the contribution that their employers make, Sushil?
Yeah, pardon?
Their own contributions or the contributions that the employers make?
Their own contribution they can increase.
Okay, so we are getting 2 points of view here, right? Okay. Shantala is suggesting it's only the employer, whereas Sushil is suggesting it is the employee as well. So I think a lot of clarity.
I'm reading something different completely.
What are you reading?
So from what I am seeing on other news websites also, it's 8.33% of the employer's contribution. So now earlier in the old pension scheme, it used to be capped at, the pensionable salary was capped at 15,000 rupees. Now let's say you make 1 lakh rupee, your basic plus DA is 1 lakh rupee. Now regardless of the 8.33%, my EPS contribution would be capped to 1,250 rupees. Now add 1 lakh, if I opt for a new pension scheme, my contribution will be around 8,333 rupees. Now this is the excess contribution of about 7,083 rupees. Now I don't understand. See, you just mentioned that if there is a deficit in that 1,1250 to 7,083, the deficit, if the EPFO can't accommodate that, will I have to pay that? And what about the interest?
Sushil?
Sushil?
There need to be some clarity on this. I got several calls regarding this from my different clients and from others. Then yes, there need to be some clarity from the government side, whether they are ready to these things. The deficit will bear. So
So
it
do
is
I end up paying the deficit?
I think what
Yeah,
Sushil
pardon?
is saying that he does not know just as yet. Needs to be more clarity. Let's get Shweta into this conversation. Shweta, you've been following up with what we're discussing here. Your take. Okay, we don't have Shweta just as yet, but it's.
So I think that 15,000 cap was until 2014.
2014.
In 2014, it
Yes.
got revised to technically 50% of your basic without keeping the cap at 15%. So what my reading suggests is that because earlier, I think when the scheme was introduced in 1995-96,
It was
it
about
started with
5,000.
5,000
Yeah,
rupees.
65.
It stepped up to 6,500, stepped up and reached this window of 15,000.
In
But
2014.
In 2014.
In 2014.
Yeah, but then on 1st September 2014, it got changed to, so the cap was removed on the basic salary, and the formula got introduced that it is your last 60 months of basic salary weighted out, averaged out into number of years of service divided by 70, and the figure of 70, so that a maximum limit of 35 years divided by 70 gives you 50% of your last drawn basic without the cap at 15,000.
And this is for EPS contribution.
And this is for EPS contribution.
Okay.
And this is specifically for private sector
Right.
employees.
The fact that our experts are divided warrants a further larger discussion and perhaps more time from government side to actually come out with answers to these questions.
And accountability.
Perhaps.
I mean, this is hard-earned money of
Absolutely.
employees,
Thousands of
which is parked with the government, which is helping the government build capex, invest in various schemes. So obviously, there needs to be clarity, and these deadlines just to tick a box to complete, the diktat of the Supreme Court should not be permitted and should not be accepted. So I think the Labour Ministry has to definitely take cognizance
Shweta is
of this.
back with us.
Right, Shweta. So who should take accountability for this lack of clarity? Should it be the Labour Ministry? Should it be EPFO officials? Because if the decision has to be made to push the deadline beyond 3rd May, which is tomorrow, and we are talking about people's hard-earned money here, then somebody has to take that call. Who takes that call?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm saying that I personally feel that it is not really the fault of the government also here, because of the fact that, since the time the scheme came in and the validity was decided, and then it has to be put on a population of, the entire nation which is working right now. I personally believe that they're also taking some time and resources and trying to understand from their own experts as to how this whole thing has to be put into place, so that nobody is prejudiced, so that everyone gets their due, and third, that they offer all kinds of clarity. If you see the EPFO website from time to time, which I happen to have been checking for quite some time now, for a number of my clients, I've been seeing that they are trying to put out as much clarity as they can. So the public sector companies have also, advised their employees to keep looking for the formula, or to keep looking for the forms, or the undertakings which the EPFO has been wanting to tell the entire population of people, even in small towns, that these are applicable to you. Sign them, please deposit them. And how to deposit them. Hard copies have to be deposited in the RPFO, or email copies can be submitted. There are several issues, and there is a technology issue in some of the smaller parts of India. So I don't think that it is very easy for the government also. It's a humongous exercise for them as well. So let's take it like, it's more like it take some time for them also to bring in complete clarity, because November 4th was the judgment, let's say.
Right.
We're sitting in May right now, just the beginning of May. Maybe they will take some time to put everything together. Because even if you know what you have to do, if there is no RPFO office where you have to go submit the form, whether hard copy or soft copy, etc., there is no point doing it. So these are the
Absolutely.
things that we need to, give a little bit of sensitivity to the government also. Even though one understands that we cannot keep waiting forever to get the benefits of a scheme that I must have, volunteered for so many years ago, almost a decade ago, I would say, decade and a half actually. So
Okay.
yeah, just a little bit of clarity is required from the government as well.
And you know, you mentioned forms there. You mentioned how tedious the process is, because some of my colleagues here who were trying to go for higher pension, opt for higher pension, also talked about how difficult it is to fill the massive volume of forms. They do not have the right adequate documentation. There is of course no clarity on computation of pension. There's no clarity on how dues will be calculated, and if a person can opt in and opt out. All those questions of course remain unanswered.
One final question, Shweta, sorry, we are running out of time, but just for ample clarity, is the cap of 15,000 rupees as basic income still valid, or was it valid till November 2022, and now has that cap been done away with? So am I looking, again, if I can pull up that formula, am I looking at my actual drawn basic salary, or I'm looking at basic salary up to a cap of 15,000 rupees? Could you just give us that one final clarity?
So it is up to 15,000 rupees.
That cap of 15,000 holds good even today, even if my last drawn 60 months averaged out basic salary is, let's say, 50,000 rupees, I still have my pension capped at the formula value of the pensionable salary capped at 15,000?
Yes.
And this is for the old scheme. The new scheme removes that cap.
Yeah, so the new pension, the higher pension scheme removes that cap. Is that right?
Correct. So, moving forward, we see that the government is trying to, so there is a basic wage, a formula which every state has. So there is a certain amount of wage that you're supposed to give to every person who's working with
Of
you
course.
on a month. So I think these kinds of formulae are all devised from there. So your basic wage is, for example, today it is 15, 16,000 in Delhi. For example, in Punjab, it is again 15, 16, 17,000 or something. So I think they're just trying to average out that amount over there. So
Shweta, what
it
if I'm
will-
making 1 lakh rupees? My pensionable, yeah. So if I'm making 1 lakh rupees, can I contribute 8,333 rupees, or will the contribution be capped to 1,250 in the new pension scheme we are talking about?
So in the new pension scheme, I think you don't have the capping. That's my research. I am still also looking for my own answers. But so far as the previous one is concerned, wherever I researched, it was the 15,000 where the
Okay.
capping was the applications.
Okay.